So Canadian doctors are feeling some regret for, people because they're poor um, or obese. Seems that whole thing about the slippery slope, that's real. But Trump is Mussolini. So there's that. God just spoke into me and said, hey, you didn't talk about Ozzy Osbourne. You got to talk about Ozzy. No, why would I talk about Ozzy Osbourne? Because he made it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I was wondering why I saw so much Ozzy on social media. So what did God want me to tell you? Well, I'll tell you in just a second. We'll do this all with the help of Biooptimizers Masszymes, biooptimizers.com/Todd. Produce more amino acids in your body and sustain and even grow more muscle. And we'll do this, of course, with the help of God Almighty and the new intro. Yep, we made the switch. The new intro to the Todd Herman Show.
The Todd Herman Show is 100% disapproved by big pharma, technocrats, and tyrants everywhere. No. From the high mountains of free America, here's the Emerald City exile, Todd Herman.
Today is the day the Lord has made, and these are the times through which God has decided we shall live. So here's what just God put on my mind. I had no intention of speaking about this at all, and then boom, there it was in my head. Ozzy Osbourne made it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and just judged from a perspective of what Black Sabbath did to music and what Ozzy Osbourne did to it, with as many iterations of himself, is deserved. Black Sabbath was fundamental to heavy metal, to dirge metal, to much. And they're also Satanists. I don't know that they all are, but I know that Tony Iommi is. The guitar player with the incredible gift of playing, though he has half fingers on one hand. I know this because of what happened at our internet radio company. Utterly bizarre moment. So back in the day when we had our company called The Dial, my friend and true, I view him as not kind of a brother, but a brother, who's a home I got to live in with his parents. His dad knew the music business inside out, record business. And my brother Matthew had been a big deal in radio and records when he was in that business himself. On his own, by the way. His dad didn't do anything for him. He just introduced him to people. Matthew got the jobs. So Matthew hooked us up with record labels and agents, and we got interviews that no one else got. So we had Elvis Costello come into the studio. We had big names come into the studio. We had Tony Iommi come into the studio, the guitar player for Black Sabbath. And an employee of ours, Kurt, who was a friend at the time, was a kind of lapsed Mormon, I guess you'd say Jack Mormon, but loved Black Sabbath. So he got to do the interview with Tony Iommi. And so they're sitting in our studio. We had a showcase studio. This is what the venture capitalists want us to build, was a studio up front. So when we brought people through, they could see how we did what we did, the content portion of what we did, because truly we were a technology company that provided content because no one else was doing it. And here's Kurt, and he's got his blonde hair and kind of a heavier dude. I'm just trying to describe the scene. I'm not body shaming. Kurt wore these round glasses at the time. And there's Tony Iommi, shocker, dressed all in black, little black eye makeup around the eyes, and a upside down cross. And Kurt says to him, hey, Tony, you remember back in the day when you guys had that shtick where you sold your soul to the devil? And Tony Iommi said, oh, no, mate. No, that was not an act. No, we did that. No, we sold our souls. That's why we have what we have. It was never an act. And Kurt just gulp. So is there new music coming out? We talked later. I said, dude, no follow-up? Like, Tony, you're going to be in hell for eternity. You think that's going to be a party? So I extend that into Ozzy, maybe unfairly because Tony Iommi's not Ozzy. So maybe Ozzy Osbourne's not satanic, maybe. But if you saw that and you're happy that he made it into the Hall of Fame, could I suggest, please, that you pray for Ozzy Osbourne and his family, that you pray that he would come to know Jesus, so that Ozzy doesn't spend eternity in hell. And I know it's someone we've never met, but if his music meant anything to you or means anything to you, or you just find him adorable, would you please think about praying for him? Because evil loves to masquerade as angels of light. It loves that. That's what Satan loves to do. He loves to sneak around in the dark. And he works by degrees. He's been working by degrees in Canada. And we've arrived at this place now where doctors are expressing this regret for things they never, ever should have done. Sometimes you can just see things coming. They're things you shouldn't do. You know, I think of this coffee company that's named after a rifle, and a rifle that's a certain color. And they placed the flag, we're the Second Amendment Coffee Company. That's who we are, baby. And I guess I've never had the coffee, so to be fair, I've never tasted it. And then when Kyle Rittenhouse was, busy not being by a couple of pedophiles, as it were, and he ended up shooting some people and killing some people and injuring a guy, shooting his arm off. Then that same coffee company came and said, yeah, so we don't think that's a good use of the Second Amendment. Whoops, ran away. Became inconvenient. So unlike them, Bone Frog Coffee will never run away from God Country Team, nor will they run away from persistence. Tim's had a winery for years. Tim Cruikshank's the founder, CEO of Bone Frog Coffee, and he's a retired Navy SEAL. He'd been a BUDS instructor. He's done 3 deployments on our behalf. There was some supply chain issues, some tech issues, and we haven't been talking about the wine. Now they're back, and Bone Frog Cellars is for real, a Cabernet and a Merlot. And I don't drink wine. I don't care for wine. I don't usually consume alcohol, maybe once in the last 20 years, actually once in the last 20 years. But my friends love wine. My wife likes it. She loved the Bone Frog wine. My daughter's not yet legally allowed to drink, but it's Idaho. Who cares? She had it swallowed, thought it was great. But our friends Tom and Sherry have traveled the world drinking wine, and they loved it. Truly loved it. So you can try it. Go to bonefrogsellers.com/Todd to get 10% off there. And of course, 10% of proceeds go to the families of fallen Navy SEALs, to the Navy SEAL Foundation. Bonefrogsellers.com/Todd. And yes, the bottles have the Bone Frog insignia. That's the insignia of fallen Navy SEALs. Bonefrogsellers.com/Todd. This comes through the Daily Mail via the Post-Millennial, that there are doctors now finally beginning to express some regret around what they've been doing. This, the write-up from the Post-Millennial. Canadian doctors find it morally distressing that the country's euthanasia program, titled Medical Assistance in Dying, MAID. Now, if you remove the I, which is actually in lowercase, it says MAD, is now available to people who are not just terminally ill, but simply unhappy with their life circumstances. Physicians have expressed guilt over the program's expansion and their participation in it, the Daily Mail reported. In 2021, Canada allowed more people to be eligible for MAID, including those with incurable but not necessarily terminal illnesses, leading to 30% more people requesting physician-assisted. But documents obtained by the Mail revealed that many doctors are not happy with the program's continual escalation towards more death. An Ontario doctor shared how one of his patients had a severe lung disease, but really requested euthanasia, mostly because he's homeless, in debt, and cannot tolerate the idea of long-term care of any kind. Another doctor wondered if it was morally acceptable for MAID to offer MAID to one woman who was fat and unhappy. Another woman was seeking assisted because she was grieving the loss of her husband. Doctors cannot participate in this when it's being used in this sense. Now, understand something. And I get that this is wildly controversial, and every time I speak of this, someone writes me an angry email, and I get it, and I welcome those emails. You can write me at thetoddhermanshow.com. I killed my dad. I mean, I didn't. He was going to die. His kidneys had shut down. His liver was shut down. There was no function in those organs. I made my dad a promise that when it was past the point of no return, I would see that it went quickly. I made my dad that promise. Perhaps I shouldn't have made that promise, but I did, and so I carried it out. So I requested that the doctor give my dad massive doses of morphine. And the doctor said, now you know what that's going to do, what you're asking me to do. I said, yes, I firmly understand that this could hasten his death. He said, okay, well, I'm going to do this because I believe he might be in pain. Okay. Funny thing. God decides when we die. Now, you can push that along, and when you do that, you end up, so did my dad. Debatable. Dad didn't die when he was supposed to, even with all the morphine. It was July 4th when the doctor came into the room, and my dad was sitting there. We'd long ago turned off the alarms, etc. And he walked in, and we were all just sitting there, and the fireworks were going off in the background. And the doctor came and said, I'm so sorry. I didn't know your dad a long time, but he seemed like a great guy. I said, no, he's still alive. He goes, what? No, it's not possible. I go, no, he's still alive. He goes, all this morphine I've been giving him. And he goes over and he checks my dad. He goes, yeah, he's still breathing. And he goes, wait. Is July 4th an important holiday with your family? I said, yeah, it's my dad and I's favorite holiday together. Oh, yeah, your dad's not going to die on July 4th. He wouldn't do that to you. When it's July 5th, tell your dad. I said, will he hear me? He goes, probably. I don't know, but tell him. Great doctor. So July 5th came. I told my dad, you did it. Thank you. We got one last 4th of July together. And ultimately, he died about 6 hours later. 6 hours later. And of course, then later you know the story that I met my dad's soul. So I participated in this, but not because my dad was fat. He was obese. Not because my dad was depressed. He was depressed. Not because my dad hated himself. He had, although being in the hospital for all that time actually kind of cured him of that, because he had so many people come to visit him to celebrate what he had done for them as a social worker, as an uncle, as a dad, as a friend. And he had a better self-esteem when he was dying than when he lived. It was one of the great miracles of God. But I'd prayed to God that my dad would learn how much he was loved and how sick he was. And God said, done, both things delivered. Had my dad come to me when he was fat and unhappy and said, I'm depressed and I want to kill myself, I would have said, no. Will you rush morphine into my body? No. He used to say things like, look, I just want you to take me out and drop me off in the woods and let me freeze to death. No. Freezing to death is actually a peaceful way to go. No, Dad, no. Not doing it. But when his kidneys had shut down and his liver had shut down and those 3 organs were dead and there was no chance of them coming back, yes, I assisted him in dying. He didn't commit. It wasn't. I did it. The doctor did it. And I feel okay about that. But we were not a system. Canada built a system for this. Government systems always grow. They always metastasize. They always seek more. Because in government, more is power. Microsoft, we had this thing where the number of heads you had communicated your power. Heads meaning people who work for you. I remember talking to a friend of mine. He was a VP there, and I saw him in Los Angeles, and he had actually moved on. I think it was at Yahoo. And I just saw him in this restaurant, walked over and sat down with him. He said, hey, here you're doing great things at Microsoft. Good job. You got a team. I said, yeah, man, I've got 7 people working for me. He goes, okay. No, that's great that you're moving up, and you deserve it. I go, so you're laughing at 7 people? He goes, yeah, dude, you don't get any respect until it's 70. They don't even start counting that as heads until it's 70. Okay, so 70 is when I have juice. Yeah, it's about 70 heads. You get 140, now you got real juice. Government's not different. How many people work in your organization? How many people are under you? What is your annual budget? How do you expand that? When you add that to the fact that there are people at the top of Canada, just like there's people at the top of the states, who want to see a decrease in population, they state it out loud every time they get a chance. You can see why this is all expanding. So to the doctors who are regretting this now, God bless you for regretting it. What other ways are you aiding death, and how are you willing to act to stop this? maybe you could speak out like you're doing now, except in Canada, there are groups after groups after group warning about what the dictator of Canada wants to do with the Online Harm Act. The Online Harm Act is going to weaponize courts against Canadians. There's a group called the Democracy Fund. It has a 26-page long brief on some of the dangers posed by this. The Online Harms Act, it's about protecting kids. Because Justin Trudeau, who's a champion of perverse pornographic sex ed in schools, wants to protect kids. He's obsessed with protecting kids. The guy who put a father in jail because he wouldn't pretend that his party in prison, because he wouldn't pretend that his daughter is a boy, is deeply concerned about kids. He wants to help the kids. What this is about is, of course, criminalizing speech, like these doctors speaking out and saying, I regret being part of that. Good thing, nothing like that can ever happen in the United States. Well, except if Trump comes in because he's Mussolini. No, now it's Mussolini. I'll show you this in a second. Size sometimes corrupts, right? More and more success can often corrupt people, particularly in business, because money comes so easy. I'll never forget the pushback I got from a VP at Microsoft when I did not want to fly to Britain. I didn't want to fly to England, not that close to Christmas, not on one day's notice, not when all I could get was first class, and literally like maybe 2 or 3 days notice, maybe being hyperbolic with one. But I go look, and the one ticket is a $25,000 stinking plane ticket. And I wrote to the VP, go, hey, my boss can't even approve this. My boss's boss can't approve this. You need to approve it. And I knew this guy, this good guy, SVP actually, corporate VP, corporate SVP. And he wrote back, I said, but this costs, I got to tell you, it costs $25,000, this plane ticket. And he said, what's your point? It's a $25,000 plane ticket. It's a $15 million deal. What do I care? Fair enough. But that sort of size corrupts because you can hide so much corruption within that size. Small is better, particularly when you're talking about something you're going to put on your body. Allen's Soap is small, first of all, because they're legitimately not ready to be big. We're not selling enough soap yet, but there's been a growth of employees from 1 to 2 to now 3. These are people that are unemployable by the standards of the rest of the world, and yet they provide a very valuable service for us at Allen's. Allen's Soap is all natural. It's made in America. It's created by a family with 3 generations of soap-making expertise. It's packaged by people who are really, really affected by autism. Some are nonverbal. Some have been through 18 operations. Some got autistic late in life. Man, how frustrating that would be that you are neurotypical, something happens to you, and now you're autistic, and you can still remember when you weren't. And suddenly your colleges and places you'd hope to work, well, not really, we can't have you. So you can continue to buy soap from companies that probably make it in China, probably with slave labor, almost certainly with a bunch of chemicals in it, or you can shift right now and go to Allen's Soaps at allenssoaps.com/Todd. You get 10% off all the products there. It's allenssoaps.com/Todd. This is from The Atlantic. It's Ann Applebaum. And Ann Applebaum has just the derangement syndrome super bad. Trump is speaking like Hitler, Stalin, and Mussolini. The former president has brought dehumanizing language into American presidential politics. He goes out and calls people deplorables, bitter clingers, things like that. It's Mussolini and such. Meanwhile, someone who's not Mussolini is Joe Biden and the people who run him, who are right now illegally holding Steve Bannon in prison. See, he qualifies for the First Step Act. He could be released. And remember, no cash bail. We got to get people out of prison. So he's not being released, even though he qualifies for that. And even the prison warden has apparently come out and admitted, yeah, Steve Bannon, he should be out of prison. So I want you to know that there is a statement been released on this. The prisons want you to know what's going on with this guy, Steve Bannon. First of all, let's you and I imagine together why this guy might be in prison.
CIA, the FBI, the DNI, the CIA, all of them. And we're going to release every single person that either traffic people or look the other way to traffic people. We're going to put it all out for the American people. All of it. Yeah, they have to understand something. We're going to hit you with a blowtorch, okay? No more games. We're going to hit you with a blowtorch. That blowtorch, we're going to not just deconstruct it, we're going to rip it apart.
He's talking about the administrative state. I don't think he meant assassinating people with blowtorches, although that charge has been made. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why he's in prison. No. He defied a congressional subpoena from the very constitutional, was it J6 committee? Very constitutional committee that ignored exculpatory evidence and then destroyed evidence. Very constitutional. Super, super duper. This is from CNN. Steve Bannon to be released from prison next week, Bureau of Prisons says, despite his attempts for earlier exit. Steve Bannon, the right-wing podcaster and former Donald Trump aide, is set to get out of federal prison next Tuesday, despite repeated attempts he and his legal defense team have made for him to be released earlier. The Bureau of Prisons said in a letter to Bannon on Monday that his release date will remain October 29, as originally set. That means he will serve his full 120-day sentence for contempt of Congress behind bars. Since learning in recent days he may be eligible to move to home confinement, Bannon has accused the Bureau of Prisons of political interference, and his attorneys have been advocating both in court and to prison officials for leniency. The acting warden of the low-security Federal Correctional Institute in Danbury, Connecticut, wrote to Bannon's lawyers on Monday that there wasn't enough time to arrange for Bannon to move to home confinement in Washington, D.C. Home confinement was a possibility for the former White House advisor because of a provision for some first-step federal offenders under the Trump-era First Step Act. Mr. Bannon has insufficient time on his sentence to process a referral because they were surprised that October 29th came. They didn't, in the 120 days he's been in there, they didn't have time to plan for him to be able to, get a ride from Connecticut to Washington, D.C., which could take several hours. It's so good that we have a government that's willing to be that utterly transparent with us. And it's so interesting that they expect us to go, that makes sense. Okay, thank you for telling me. Size really can have that effect. You can just hide so much in size. Oh, we're just super stupid. We don't know how to get people from Connecticut to D.C. Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of those crazy people who continues to make unfounded allegations about opportunities for vote fraud. I forget what day it is. Is it Tuesday? It's Tuesday. I think we talked earlier about the ballots that done gone missing. So there'll be a show coming out later today, the 3-story show, where in Michigan, they just lost a whole bunch of ballots. Just an entire carload of ballots. Just no stinking clue where they went. It came from the Federalist. Logan Washburn, October 16, 2024. Grand Rapids, Michigan has lost a tray of absentee ballots. City clerk Joel Hondorp told the Federalist the city's investigating but does not know where the ballots went. Voters are calling saying, hey, we didn't receive our ballots. Hondorp said there's a tray of ballots that were set to be mailed out. Looks like it might have got to the post office. We're trying to figure out what the disconnect is. Maybe they'll get there if there's enough time, because they didn't have time to get Bannon out of prison, but maybe it'll get there. So Marjorie Taylor Greene is calling this out, and she made a video about this. She was on with Alex Jones, who's unbanned, by the way. Remember that? That when they banned Alex Jones, it was going to just be Alex Jones? I'll tell you about this in a second. There's things that are banned in our country that shouldn't be. You could right now be in this audience, in this podcast family. You could have a surgery scheduled, let's say, 2 weeks from now. And let's go through the process of what that means for you and something that's banned. So that means you go in probably 5 o'clock in the morning. They shave that area. You know the drill. If you've not been through surgery, that's what they do. Eventually they drug you. It's not sleep. It's the grossest thing, waking up from that stuff. It is so gross because it's not sleep. And I was under, for my sinus surgery, I was under for 6 hours. I've never felt worse waking up from that. It took me days to actually wake up. There's all that risk. My surgeon, in the case of my sinuses, said, yeah, we're going to be right up against your brain. I got to be really, really careful up there. Yeah, please do. And then for my shoulder surgeries, it was similar, maybe not as bad, but you could have that scheduled right now. What if I could say something could swoop in and it turns out you don't need to be cut open? You don't need to be put under. That the ACL, MCL injury, the lower back injury, even a traumatic brain injury, if it's tissue damage, it can be repaired. Very often by an injection of stem cells from placentas and umbilical cords. Nothing to do with aborted babies. If you're wondering, I've had this done twice. Once for my right shoulder, once for my left ankle. Incredible results. When they do this, the first thing the stem cells do from Renew.Healthcare in Mexico, Puerto Vallarta, is they kill the inflammation, which kills the pain, which speeds healing, and then they build. Those cells are magical. They're building cells. They're designed to build baby. Whatever part of baby needs to be built, even cartilage. If there's enough tissue, enough cartilage, enough muscle, enough tendon intact, they'll inject it right into that part of your body, skip the surgery, heal more quickly, and don't have the inherent risks. Plus, spend 4 or 5 days in beautiful Puerto Vallarta. Here's how you can find out if they'll help you. You go to the website. They'll tell you what to do. They'll look at your MRIs and your medical records, and then they'll tell you. Go to renew.healthcare. It's RENUE.healthcare. RENUE.healthcare. Please do mention you're part of the Todd Herman Show family, be it on podcast, YouTube, radio shows, Substack, renew.healthcare. Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of them crazy ladies going out there talking about some form of election integrity.
In my district, and so Whitfield County, someone posted up that when they went to vote in Whitfield County here in Georgia's 14th district, now remember, we're a swing state and we need everyone to vote in my district. And so they went to vote and we have the Dominion machines. And you go through and you mark president, you mark, for Congress, that would be me. They marked Donald Trump and they marked who they were voting for the rest of the way down their ballot on the machine. Then when they're finished, the machine prints their ballot, a paper copy, a printed copy, and each voter has to review that printed copy to make sure that it has selected the candidates that they want to vote for. And so when this voter printed their ballot and they looked, it had changed. It was not Donald Trump. It was not me. And it was not the other ones they had voted for. It had switched. And so they went up to one of the election workers and they said, here's the problem. The machine switched it and my printed ballot, I did not vote for these people. So they had to start over and they went through it several times and it kept on making the same error. Kept on switching the votes. And so this is something we're just starting to look into today because I just found out about it this morning before I came on your show today. But we will be following up and I'll be talking to election workers and officials here in the district and making sure that this happens, that these ballots are correct, because that's extremely concerning. It sounds similar to what we heard in 2020. But there's other things that I'm concerned about, Alex. Here in Georgia, we fixed our voting laws, but states that did not fix their voting laws is Pennsylvania, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, extremely important swing states. They never fixed their election laws after 2020. And then you add on to that the amount of concerns that we have about people being sent emails overseas telling them how to obtain an absentee ballot and telling them how to send it in by email, literally sending it in electronically, how to vote in our elections from overseas. The list goes on and on and on. And then you add on the number of illegal aliens that we are concerned voting in our elections. There's a good reason why people are skeptical. There's a good reason why people don't trust our elections, right?
If they wanted people to trust the elections, they would make the elections trustworthy. Why wouldn't they want people to trust the elections? Well, let's boil right back up to the top. One day, I think there's going to be election officials who, like the doctors in Canada, are going to say, you know what? I regret being part of that system. Because remember, Canada built a system. It started with this idea that some individual doctors would help people who were near the end of life. Like my dad was, he was going to die in the next 24 hours. He had no kidney function, no liver function. So in that case, it was a son keeping a promise to a father and a doctor agreeing to participate in that, knowing that this man was not going to live. And knowing that my dad would end up drowning in his own body fluids, which I refused to have be the case. I refused to have my dad in distress. Why? That expanded then when systems were built around this in Canada, from an individual doctor making the heart-wrenching choice to help someone end their life because they're terminal and in great pain. It expanded into a system that needed to expand because it needed more power, because these systems always seek more power, so it needed more employees. To justify more employees, they found more people to. As they were killing more people, forces that want to see a decrease in population came along and poured money into this and attention into this. Now they had real power. Now people who are fat and sad can go in and say, please kill me, or 19 and poor. There was a woman who was 19 and poor, and she was asking for assisted in Canada. So our voting systems. There were companies that wanted to make money doing voting through technology, voting online. Friend of mine, dear friend, I dearly love, he's a big proponent of this stuff. I'm not. Because I don't want the profit motive near our elections. There's already profit motive near our elections through government. Look at all the money poured into elections. There's already a profit motive there. So why add profit motive on top of profit motive? And then why this? Why introduce complexity? Code is complex. Election hardware is complex. A piece of paper and your dots on it is not complex. The more complexity in a situation, the more opportunity you have to hide fraud. So you go back to Michigan. We lost a tray of ballots. Were they mostly Republican or Democrat? Don't know. In the separate country of Washington State, you can identify by looking into the ballot window on ballots that go out, by shaking it around, you can tell if it's a Republican or Democrat ballot. Consequently, when you send it back, you can know. So if you are a dishonest postal clerk, you go, ooh, Republican ballots, I'll throw these away. That's complexity introduced into this. When you get into voting machines, you introduce complexity, and within complexity, you can hide fraud. You can hide it as incompetence. Wow, it's accidentally changing votes? Golly, that's so weird. We'll get on that. Complexity always happens with technology. This morning, our stupid, cheap little $45 coffee machine that makes my beloved Bone Frog coffee at 4:30 in the morning or 4:15 a.m., it steamed. It was making its noise. I went over to get the coffee, and no liquid was going into the coffee pot. And I looked, and the little faucet that was pointed, it was right in the right area, but it wasn't going in. Why? Because there's complexity. So what do I use? Pour over. If they wanted this stuff to be trustworthy, they'd make it trustworthy. So why don't they want it trustworthy? I think they want the doubt. I think the doubt is helpful for them. Because with the Mockingbird media, there's something they do with the doubt, and it's completely reliant on with whom the doubt lies. I'll explain this in just a second. I don't think they want us to doubt our financial system. I think they want us to just believe things are absolutely rock solid. Look, the stock market's going up, baby. Yeah, but unemployment's up too. Stock market's going way up, so is inflation. The Fed's going to cut rates. Sugar rush. We've got the strongest currency in the world. Backed by what? You know what it's backed by? Our Army, our Navy, our Air Force. our ability to project force. It's not gold. It's our ability to bomb you. That's what backs our currency. It wasn't always this way. There was a time in America where financial sense meant something, where the balance sheets of companies mattered, where unemployment tracked with stock markets. That day is gone. So your retirement account was probably set up for a time when there were morals attached to the way we spend our money and even laws. Those laws are largely ignored these days. Is your retirement account set up for the woods with the predators of risk? Or is it set up for the beautiful buddies of an era where there were actually rules? Find out. My friend Zach Abraham, Chief Investment Officer, Bulwark Capital Management, will take a meeting with you. You can do it on video. You can do it on the telephone. You can even fly out to the Seattle area. Don't worry, he's not downtown. You're not going to get robbed in all likelihood. Maybe, but probably not. I mean, maybe. Probably not, though, I think. Actually, have him meet you further out. Maybe in the middle of the state, something like that, in the woods. He'll do this, no obligation, absolutely free. He'll listen to your retirement goals. He'll compare them to the money you have in all your accounts, your land, your equity, and then he will tell you if there's a gap. If you're set to retire, he'll tell you, congratulations, well done, go get him, Tiger, you're ready to go. But what does retirement mean to Zach? Successful retirement means knowing exactly how much money you'll have every single month for the rest of your life. If you're not there, he'll tell you you're not there, and there's a way he can help. It's no obligation. It's free. Just go to knowyourriskradio.com, K-N-O-W, knowyourriskradio.com, or call them at 866-779-RISK.
Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate, and actual performance may differ. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Trek 24308.
So here's the way I think they benefit from the doubt. They know that they've got the Mockingbird media on their side. They know they've got academia on their side. So when there's doubt in the election system, when it's a Democrat who wins, well, it's very dangerous. You're communicating that doubt. That's stochastic terrorism. That's a literal insurrection. So when a Democrat wins, the Mockingbirds say to the victims of the Democrat media, that was the safest, most secure election in history. And the victims of the Mockingbird media go, oh, yeah. And yet there's all this disinformation swirling around. They like the conservatives doubt the election outcome. Here's why. People, when they get to that level of doubt, some people will say it doesn't matter. So they'll protest the broken system, the purposely broken system, by not using it. I don't use traditional healthcare. I try to avoid it. I don't have a general practitioner. I'm my own general contractor. I avoid corrupt systems all I can. We can wish all day long that our system wasn't corrupt, and it is. If you're in a red state, it's better. I like the election security and integrity of Idaho far better than the complete purposeful lack of it in the separate country of Washington, and I still want you to vote. Here's why. The phrase evangelically is this: but God. God, I believe, saved President Trump for a reason. God, I believe, does not like election thievery. You shall not steal. So what about this when we vote? What if you put a cloak of protection on your vote? What if you invoke the delegated powers the Lord Jesus gave us as Christians who follow him to put a cloak of protection around your ballot? That it be honestly counted. That we have an honest election return. Things are close, they tell us. Sometimes it doesn't look like it. Sometimes you look at Nate Silver's forecast, for instance. Early this week, Nate, for the first time, has said that he was the New York Times guy that everyone thinks is 538, Mr. Statistics. that President Trump was in a lead nationally for the first time in his modeling. It was very close, 49.5% for Kamala Harris, 50.2% for President Trump. So statistically a tie. And yet it's the first time that Nate Silver's model has shown this. And then let's remember all of this is in fact secondary. All of it. In Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, we were reminded of this. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Vote stealing is stealing. It comes from coveting, a sin of the mind, then a sin of action. My suggestion is all of us, remember the delegated powers through Jesus Christ, not ours, but his. And let us pray cloaks of protection around all of our votes. This is the Todd Herman Show. Please go be well, be strong, be kind, and please make every effort to walk in the light of Jesus Christ.